Hey guys, it's Technomancers here. I'm Will Dixon. I'm one of the mentors for the Technomancers, Team 1758, first robotics team. I'm here with Zach.
Hello, everybody.
Apparently, who doesn't like to talk as fast as most people. Anyways, today we were going to cover Git, and this is what our team uses to make sure that our code is well available to everyone on our team. We have private repositories so that we can do it during competitions, but then we make them public afterwards. I'll talk more about what private and public are in a minute. But what Git is, according to Wikipedia, is a version control system for tracking changes in computer files and coordinating work on those files among multiple people. Software development's a good reason to use it, of course. It was actually created by Linus Torvalds. He was the guy that created the Linux kernel. So actually the machine I'm running on right now, he created the kernel, or developed the kernel for it, and is still working on it, which is nice. Let's break down what a version control system is to begin with, though. So a version control system is something that I can have a file, or basically start off with a blank file system. A blank file system would be just an empty folder, so I'll just have an empty folder here or something. And then I'll have and then this will be what's called the repository folder in here. Right? That repo holds a bunch of other files. So other files will go inside of this. So let's say I create a Hello World folder, or a Hello World file. Hello World.txt in there, right? So version control, what it will do is like, hey, you started off with nothing, right? I currently had nothing inside the repo, and then I had added this new file. And then when I add this file, it's going to say, hey, that's a new version of this repository. So then it would show up as a change, and then let's say I edited the Hello World file to contain something else, right? And then I edit the contents of it to include, Zach is really quiet.
I'm sorry, what?
And distracted. Anyway, so I edit that text file. And so now I have two versions of this one file. And what most people do is they hit Control-Z to undo and make sure that they can get back to where they were. But what a Git repository does, or a version control system, would allow you to check out old versions of your file. So that way, if you make a change that broke something, you can revert those changes back and be back in a working state. So it's a very nice way that if there's multiple people working on a file and one person breaks it, then the other person can come in and know with in best regards that they could get this thing working, even if versions are messed up and stuff. So that is just to touch on the topic of what a version control system. Git is what I call a distributed version control system, though, because there's different versions of it, but a distributed one. Distributed means, let's say I have two computers, so Zach's computer and my computer, right? Zach, name a file. Just a file name.
How about we name this file cookbook.txt, because I'm hungry.
Alright, so he creates a cookbook.txt.
Yes!
What's going to be the first line inside of it?
I am a foodie.
I am what?
A foodie.
Like that? Okay. Anyways, so he's creating a cookbook.txt, and well, let's say I was hungry. Let's say I was... Alright, I'm not hungry, but I need to write a Git tutorial. Well, look at there. I'm already doing that. So I'm going to create a Git tutorial.txt, right? And the first line is where to start. Right? So we have two files, but we want them in the same repository for some whatever weird reason. I don't know why we'd want a cookbook and a Git tutorial, but we want it in the same repository. So what's going to happen is there's this remote repository, right? that remote repository, git Zach, can push his cookbook.txt up, and then I can push my git tutorial.txt up, and now the remote repository now has the cookbook and my git tutorial. And now, let's say I wanted Zach's cookbook, right? I could pull from the remote repository, and Zach can pull from the remote repository, and now he has my file, and I have his file. So it's a very nice way of just, people will be like, why not use Dropbox? Well, if we edit the same files, it kind of gets a little bit more difficult. But the distributed part means everyone has a copy of this repository, not just one person. So the remote repository has a copy, Zach has a complete copy of all the history and all the files, I have a complete copy of all the history, all files, stuff of that nature. Making it really nice. That means if the remote repository goes dead, right? In theory, and actually in practice you can, we don't normally do it because the remote repository never really goes down. But I could pull from Zach's computer instead, and Zach could pull from my computer. Sorry about that, guys. We had a short little Discord issue with the audio. Apparently Zach couldn't hear me as well. That was my fault. So anyways, that's what a distributed system is. What was that? What's up, Zach?
Just edit it out. No problem.
Yeah, that's the power of editing afterwards. Live stream, suck it up.
Right.
Alright, so that covers what a distributed version control system is. Now, Git is a little bit more complicated than just pushing and pulling files, but it's not too hard, so don't fret over it. We have what's called commits. A commit, I'm just going to draw circles for commits. You can think of commits as points in history that are in line, right? So this commit goes to this, and this goes to this, right? So that could be like V1, V2. I wouldn't actually call them V1, V2, V3 because you can have multiple commits between different versions. But you could think of it like that. What's nice is we have a local copy of this whole tree. Wow, wrong button. Anyways, so we have a local copy of all of these commits. Using this local copy, I can edit files, right? So there's 3 different areas. We have, on your computer, we have what's called a working copy. We have what's called staged, right? And then we have what's called, I don't know what's a good term to call it. So we have a working copy, a staged, and then I'll just call it the commit, or commits. Commit tree, maybe? I think commit tree is probably better. So working copy, this is where you're editing your files. You don't have to worry about Git, it's just in the background. It's where you actually change your files, right? Change files, remove files, add them as you need, stuff like that. Staged is where we actually tell Git, hey, we're looking into adding this file to our commit history. So this is, it's like a neutral zone. What happens is, let's say I added a changed file to the staged. If I edit that file again, it does not show up in staged. It still shows up in working copy. And that old version of that file is still in staged. This makes it kind of nice. It gets kind of confusing to begin with, but you start getting used to the flow. And then when you actually are ready, you actually make it, and you actually go in and create a commit with it, right? And this adds it. This is where you add your commit, and you add that to the tree. So then you would have another commit. It's called v4, and it appends it to the tree. Is there something I need to make more clear, Zach? I'm not quite sure.
No, I think you've got it pretty much covered well so far.
Alright.
Maybe you might want to talk about differing branches next?
Branches next? That would actually be a good flow over to it. So you notice, at talking about branches, this kind of looks like a branch. What you would call that is, some people call it a trunk, actually, but it's also the main branch, if you want. And you notice how they're all just single commits. But when you have multiple people working on, files, you have different people working on different features. And what happens is you start wanting to be able to say, hey, I need a sturdy version of this branch before I go off and do my changes. So go into that. What may need to happen, let's see here. There we are. Alright, so we have, let's say, we're going to call this the main branch. Main branch has a couple commits on it. Also, Zach, are you keeping up with live chat? Because I haven't been able to.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at live chat, don't worry.
Okay. So there's our main branch. It has a few commits, and apparently the commits get bigger and bigger as I draw circles. And then let's say Zach wants to work on a new feature. He wants to add, since this is robotics, a drivetrain. This was just base code stuff or something like that. So he's going to actually go off, and he's going to work on his branch. We're going to call this Zach's branch, or just Zach for short. And then he's going to make commits himself. So he's going to edit files and add them to the commit tree, right? Well, let's say I'm also working on a, let's say back here, actually, before this commit was even here, I started working on something. And I started working on PIDs. So this is Will's branch. I was just working on PIDs just for an example. And we have commits. I have different commits. Now, you can see this can get kind of messy because now we got different histories, and then Atosh is over here pushing to master. Let's just put it that way. He's always pushing to master. Anyways. So we have this branching structure. Now we have 3 different versions of the code, right? We have one up here, we have one right here, and one right here. This can kind of get confusing when you first look at it, but it's actually not that bad once you get used to it. This allows you to have a stable version of your code. So what's going to happen is, let's say I'm done with my stuff, right? What I'm first going to do is I'm going to create what's called a pull request on GitHub. Now, this isn't a Git thing. Git doesn't have the idea of pull request. GitHub has the idea of pull request. And I'll go over what GitHub is in a second. But what I want to do is I want to merge this branch in with this branch. So what's going to happen is I'm going to create a second commit, or this is what it does in the background, right? I'm going to create a second commit, and this is the only kind of merges that have, or the only kind of commits that have 2 links. You notice how they all have just single links? Like, they all link back, right? That's actually how the link flows. It actually just, this one links to this links to this one links back to this one. The only commit that has links that link back to 2 commits are merge commits. And so then Zach will come along and he's like, well, I want to merge mine in too. So what's going to happen in the background is it's going to create another commit, and it's going to merge his code in. And so now all of our changes are back onto this main branch, and now we have the best of both worlds. We have Zach's drivetrain with my PIDs, and now we can keep working on and create other branches later on. I don't know if that was clear enough. Is there something that needs to be covered, Zach?
Yes.
Is there anything else that needs to be covered with branching, or?
I think, are you going to cover pull requests when you go over GitHub?
GitHub? Yeah, I can. Let's actually go over a few commands just real quick. And I think commands might actually be better not written on the by my hand, because my hands are kind of. Anyways, how's that text? Is that too small? There. Let's just create it a little bigger. Make sure that you guys can see that.
Stream delay.
Yeah, I know there's a stream delay.
Okay. Can you zoom in on the command line?
I can zoom in a lot. Alright, to me, according to live stream, it looks well. And I made it a little bigger, but that's fine. We can deal with it, right? Anyways, when it comes to Git, I actually, well, if I was in the right window, I have a bunch of folders, but I have one called Git, and you can see there's our 2017 stuff, grip, outline viewer, blah. I'm gonna go into Technomancers, and I'll cover what Java Basics is later. But anyways, the first thing about creating a Git repository is make that empty folder. So we created an empty folder. I'm going to go into Git Basics, and you see there's nothing in there. That ls command just means list. I know I'm in Linux and not Windows, but I'm more comfortable in it and can type really fast. So just take my word for it. There's nothing in there. Now when I do a git init, what this does is it initializes this empty folder as a Git repository. So it's an empty repository. Git does this great job of like saying initialized empty Git repository here. So now I have a repository. I don't need a remote repository. I can push and pull and all that fun stuff, or push and pulls with remotes. Sorry, I can commit, and I can revert, I can reset, I can do all that fun stuff just locally without having to have a remote repository. But where it becomes really powerful is when you do have a remote repository. So I initialized it. It did create. I didn't mean to get A, I meant LSA. It did create this folder called .git, and that's hidden. This holds the internals of our Git, branch information, configuration, where our head is, all this fun stuff. To tell you the truth, I don't know what half of this stuff is, but this is your Git repository. So since it's hidden, when I write ls, just normally you don't see it, but when that A tells me to say all, find all, my head's in the way.
Hey, well, quick note. Things popping up in the lower right or lower left are being cut off by your camera. So yep. Things that you're typing and such, or yep, outputs.
Let's see here. Let's fix that real quick. I'm gonna put it in the top. I'll move myself real quick. There we are. That should be better. Anyways. So you can see there's all that fun stuff there. Alright, so now let's actually edit or add a file. So I'm actually just going to create a file called cookbook.txt. Yes. We're gonna have brownies in here. We're gonna have cookies. I mean, who doesn't like lo mein? Fortune cookies.
Okay.
Anyways, so I'm going to write to this file that. Just to show you, there's the whole file right there. Now, if I do a git status, this shows me the status of what I'm currently in. And you'll see there's untracked files called cookbook.txt. That means that this Git doesn't know about this file. It's new, it doesn't know what it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to add it so that Git knows what it is. And now it is staged. If I do a git status again, you'll see changes to be committed. This is in the staged area. It's going to create a new file called cookbook.txt. Alright, and so now if I do a git commit, right, because I want to commit this change, it's going to tell me that, hey, you need to write a message for it. And it opens it up in a text editor. And I can say, added foods that I really want, right? I'm gonna create that commit, right? Now if I do a git status, yeah, what's up? Still couldn't see me because of my camera?
Yeah, camera. Move it over to the top right. Probably would be best.
Wish I could. I can only keep it in the... I don't have a crop for my camera.
Really?
Yeah, so it has to be on the right.
Or on the left.
Oh. Yep. Yeah.
Maybe middle of the left. Because...
Well, I'm done editing the file, right?
Yeah.
So I'll keep it where it is now.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
It's okay.
Anyways, I really need to figure out a way to crop my camera. I thought there was a way, but...
Just buy a green screen?
Right? I actually do have somewhat of one. It's fabric, so... it just doesn't work too well because I don't have lighting and all that down pat. Anyways, so
It's
if I run
future.
yeah, for the future. You see with the git status, that I'm on branch master, nothing to commit, working tree is clean. That's because I created that git commit. But if I do a git log, you'll notice that my commit is there, added foods that I really like. Now I have what's called aliases, which make it look nicer than having all that fun stuff out there. But aliases are more of an advanced topic than anything. Alright, so let's say, oh, well I forgot to add something to cookbook. So, I'm going to edit cookbook again. I'm going to move myself to the bottom so you guys can still see me. There we are. So, there we are. There's all my fun stuff, right? And what kind of food should I add, Zach? Let's see, we're going to add juice, even though it's not a food. We're going to add juice, ice cream, they're always good. Anyways, there we go. So we'll go ahead and make those changes. Move myself back up to the top so you can see what I'm typing. And alright, so now if we do a git status, you'll see that, hey, change is not staged for commit. Hey, this file that I know of has changed. There's something different here. Do you want to make these changes? No, and then there's also no changes added to commit. So there's nothing in the staged area, but there's stuff in your working copy that isn't there yet. So I'll go through the same process. We'll go through git add. We'll add the cookbook in there. Now if I run a git status, oh, well look, now it knows about it. It is staged. I know about this, and this is where you can add multiple files. You don't have to have one file per staged. So, anyways, we'll git commits, and we'll add another message to this. This message should say, really should remember the ice cream. Right? There we are, and I guess I'll just stay in the center because it makes it easier to read.
There you go. Good idea.
So, I really should remember the ice cream. And so, yeah, I committed it. Now, if I look at the log, you'll notice, hey, now I have 2 commits. Added, I really want this ice cream, remember the ice creams. Or foods that I really want, and then really should remember the ice cream. Right? Again, how I was talking about the nice view, this to me looks nicer. It tells you where you are. It gives you short information about everything else. So, I'm going to copy that. This is what's called the git hash, or the commit hash. It's a hash of all the files there. Now, what's really neat about it is, how I was talking about version control? What I can do is I can say, hey, I want to check out this commit. Okay, it says you can, but be careful, you're not actually on a branch right now. You know how I was talking about branches earlier. You're not on a branch, you're just on a random history commit. You don't want to edit history. But just to show you what I'm talking about, I can go back into cookbook, and you'll notice there's no ice cream there. And the reason the ice cream's not there is because if you look at git log, you'll notice I don't have that one commit there anymore because I went backwards. But now if I do master, right, because that's where I was, and then I look at that file again, ice cream and juice are back because of the power of history. Makes it really nice when editing code. So I think that covers most of Git and the basics. I think it's time for GitHub. What do you think?
Yeah. I think you covered enough of the basic commands with Git so far, so probably make the connection to GitHub, and that'll be good.
Sounds good to me. With GitHub, it is, according to Wikipedia, it is a web-based Git or version control repository on the internet hosting service. Very powerful. So you know how I was talking about distributed how it's a distributed system. This just hosts your repository online. So that when I push code to the remote repository, Zach can pull from the remote repository without my computer having to be on. Before, you could do it all within just your computers to make things I say easy, just so you don't have to worry about the internet. You're just on the same network. But GitHub makes it a whole lot easier. So to go what GitHub looks like, this is what GitHub looks like. This is what a repository looks like. It has your different files in there. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to... So you create a GitHub account, and then you can create a new repository. I'm going to name this one Git Basics. This is probably not going to exist there for too long, just because I just want to show this for purposes of teaching. So anyways, so there we are. I just created an empty repository. You notice how it says you have just access to people, teams, stuff like that. And they can see this, and I can import code from here. So I want to be able to add this remote repository. So I do a git remote add origin git at github.com, not coim.com, Technomancers, and we called it Git Basics, and there we are. So now I could do git push, so I'm pushing my changes to origin, which is what we just created above, and the branch master. It's asking for my password because of things. Because I'm really secure. Some people don't even have that set up. Anyways, you'll notice push to blah, new branch master set to tracking remote origin. That's what that -u did, is it set it to a tracking branch. Again, a little bit more complex than this is worth. But if I refresh this page, you'll notice there's that cookbook.txt with all those files in there. But not only does it have that, but it shows that I have 2 commits and what my old version of the files look like. And it's also a good way to show the difference between 2 files, right? So I could see that this one commit added juice and ice cream to it. So GitHub's a really powerful tool. You can create pull requests, which is what I was talking about earlier. Other people can pull down this code. This code's probably not going to be there for long because it's not really code. It's just to show you the basics. But GitHub's a very, very powerful tool. And if this video gets enough views, likes, comments, I will definitely do a little bit more on GitHub itself. I think that covers it all. Zach, what do you think?
I think that something key to note with pull requests as well is that you can set permissions on different members of, say, an organization. So if you have your own personal repository or repo, you can obviously pull request different branches as such. But if you're working on a larger project with multiple people, you can actually control who is allowed to make pull requests and who is allowed to approve of pull requests. That way, you don't have people throwing your code into different wrenches of just all sorts of garbage or disarray. And I think that's very valuable, especially on large open source projects that you can find just by browsing GitHub.
Yep, definitely. Just to kind of go over what these pull requests look like, you'll notice that the purple means merged in, red means we didn't merge them in or something like that. We just closed them. Here's one that we requested a change and we closed out early because of something. We'll see. Cleaning up a few files we no longer need. Files changed. You'll see it shows you the old version and the new version. I think this was just moving stuff around. That's what that looks like. Renaming drivetrain to sensors, changing separate values around. So even though there's small changes, I still encourage using pull requests so that I make a change, somebody else can see and verify, yeah, this change is going to do what you think it should. So the very, very powerful tool. I haven't used projects, even though it looks like we did. Issues are another way of tracking what needs to get done. Like, hey, we need to tweak the peg pipeline command, or update build.gradle, which I'll cover later. Have compressor start on robo init, stuff like that. It's nice to have like a to-do list almost, and this is what this is. And you also you can have people comment on these things and explain their reasoning for it and stuff like that. But anyways, if you guys liked it, like this video, please hit the thumbs up button down below. Subscribe to us so you know when we actually do another video. And thank you guys for watching. Bye.